afternoon, everyone. I'm Cara Grant, and I am the MCert, which stands for Master Certification in Teaching Physical Education for the college. And so what this means is this program is a one-year intensive program, and I get to support all the students that are embarking on that journey to become a teacher after finishing up their undergraduate degree. So that's me, Cara Grant, supporting MCert students in their journey to being PE teachers.
Great, thank you. All right, and Dr. Ranadive, I'm going to come to you next.
So hi, I'm Sushant Ranadive. I'm an assistant professor and a faculty member with area of specialization in exercise physiology. And I mentor students who come in for graduate degrees for master's or PhD, especially in Kines, but especially in exercise physiology. I do teach, I know a couple of you on the student side, I do teach a couple of courses, one of which being Kines 360 and then 465, which is a physical activity and chronic disease prevention. So I have two sides to it. One is research, which is women's health kind of a perspective, and then there's teaching aspect. So that's all that I have.
Thank you. All right, and so before we transition into our student panelists today, I'll go ahead and allow Dr. Jetty and Andrea. So Shannon, I'll come to you next. There we go.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Shannon Jetty. I'm an associate professor in the Department of Kinesiology, and like Dr. Ranadive, I also advise graduate students, so MPH students, MA students, and doctoral students. And then more recently, I'm now the director of graduate studies. So for all of our 3 graduate programs located in the department, so that master's in MPH, or the physical activity masters, as well as the MA and the PhD.
Thank you. All right, and then Andrea, oh, hold on. I had you, there we go. You shifted around on me. All right, and you can go ahead, Andrea.
So my name is Andrea Romeo. I am the coordinator for our graduate studies. So I work directly with Dr. Jetty in helping to organize our students with their coursework and getting registered for classes, and some of the more day-to-day things. I also am an instructor in the department, so I teach Kines 200, Kines 201, and some of the physical activity courses. I also teach a course more so linked to our MPH in physical activity, which is called Empowering Physical Activity. It is a scholarship in practice. So if that is something that you're interested in, you might want to look into taking that course. It's Kines 286. It's offered in the spring semester. I'm also a graduate of both our undergrad program and the Masters of Public Health. So I can answer questions about both of those things as well.
Thanks. All right, so we will go ahead and transition into introducing our current student panelists, who again represent a variety of both MA, PhD. Some have done the MA and are now in their PhD. Some are former Kines undergrads as well. So again, just kind of representing a variety of experience in Kines. So Sarah, I will come to you first.
Awesome. Hi, everybody. My name is Sarah, and I'm a current master's student in the exercise physiology specialization. So Dr. Ranadive is my PI, actually. And I actually did do my undergrad at University of Maryland. So I've been a TERP for a very long time, and I hope to be a TERP for a little bit longer and hopefully do my PhD here as well. My career goals post whenever I'm done with school are either academia or private research. However, I haven't quite had enough experience with everything to know my exact path yet. But I'm hoping I can be a good resource for you guys today.
Great, thank you. And Sarah, you were a dual degree with biology, is that correct? Kines and bio?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, I got degrees in bio and kinesiology, so I can give those perspectives.
Great, thank you. All right, and I am scrolling through trying to find Tori. So okay, found you. All right, Tori, I'm gonna spotlight you next.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Tori Thompson. I am currently a second year PhD student in kinesiology with this in the concentration of physical cultural studies. Similar to Sarah, I also did my undergrad and my master's in kinesiology. So I've been on campus for like a decade and with more to go. So I can also speak to those perspectives. In my research in physical cultural studies, in a nutshell, just looks at the intersection of public health and social justice. And I'm so grateful that PCS, physical cultural studies, gives me that space to do so, to research those things. And yeah, Turk for Life is not that bad. I did not mean to say that cynically. That like it's a good thing.
I feel like most of us here are kind of in that TERP for Life time frame in one capacity or another. So no offense taken, don't worry. All right, Gina, I'm going to come to you next.
Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Gina. I'm a second year PhD student in the cognitive motor neuroscience branch, although I specifically study biomechanics. I got my master's here also, so this is technically like my 4th year at Maryland. So I haven't spent as long, but I'm still planning on spending a couple more years here to finish my PhD. And my advisor is Dr. Jay Shim. Some of you might know him. He teaches Kines 300, and he's also teaching like a clinical biomechanics class this semester. And my focus is specifically sport biomechanics. So I kind of just look at performance enhancement and injury prevention and the lower extremity. So if you guys have any questions on that stuff, biomechanics, or the master's or PhD programs, I'm here to help.
Great, thank you. All right, and then finally, we will introduce Sam. Oh, hold on, I passed you. Okay. And go ahead, Sam.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name's Sam. I'm a first year MPH student in the physical activity program. I, like Tori and Sarah, have been a TERP for Life, so I got my undergrad in kinesiology as well. I was also in the accelerated BS MPH program, which allowed me to start taking graduate courses my senior year, so I can answer questions about that too. Yeah, and so I'm just excited to be here and answer any questions.
Great, thank you all. All right, so we'll go ahead and transition into some questions that I've drafted. And then again, for our student participants, our undergrad student participants, if at any point you have a question that you want me to ask, we just send that to me via the chat and I can try to work that in, or we'll bring that up as a general Q&A at the end. And again, the second half will transition into breakout rooms where you'll have a chance to meet with our students and advisors in either small groups or more one-on-one to ask any specific individual questions that you might have. So more so for Dr. Grant and Dr. Anadive, but if you could share kind of in general what courses, tests, requirements, prerequisites, et cetera, are typical or required for your students to have to be admitted into your respective graduate programs. And then if you could also provide some info on average, given cohorts can, fluctuate from year to year, but about how many students are typically admitted to your programs. And Cara, would you want to start first?
Yeah, it'd be my pleasure. All right. Okay, everybody. Once again, I know that how you spend your time is important, so I'm going to try to make this as enjoyable as possible. So what do we have here? One thing I'd like to say is we have 100% job hiring rate in our program, partner with the College of Education. So 100% of our students have a job, and the average rate of starting salary for a PE teacher in the state of Maryland with a master's degree is $50,000 or more. And that's for a 10-month salary. So that you're off a couple months in the summer. Some people do other endeavors, some rest. So You basically get paid to do what you love. Serving students pre-K through 12 is a certification. So what I love about being able to help future PE teachers is they could do elementary school PE, middle school PE, high school PE, or adapted PE, serving our students with cognitive or behavioral disabilities. So think about different disabilities that you have where a student may not graduate with a typical diploma. Prerequisite classes. So to be ready for this class, this program, this 1-year intensive program where you get to work with kids during the day, and then you have some classes in the evening, you need exercise physiology, biomechanics, motor learning, motor development, sport psychology. You need some sort of diversity and cultural competence. I loved hearing my colleague on the panel today talk about culturally relevant and social justice issues, because we have that diversity infused throughout our program as well, because we serve students from different backgrounds. And you need 5 sports courses or physical activity courses in your undergraduate program. So all that will get you prepared. So if there's one thing you take away, is to reflect, do you like working with little people or people that are in high school or middle school? Do you love being physically active? Do you love teaching people how much you love being physically active? And you might want to be a PE teacher. So if you're interested in those things, our program has a 100% hiring rate. I'm sure you'd enjoy having a job that's a career in a profession that you love, good health insurance, and we have 100% of our tutors hired. Our cohorts range. We've had as few as 3 folks in the cohort and as much as 12. So, and I know some of you may know Andrew Ginsberg. He works directly with the cohort to support supervision. All right, I'm going to turn it over to our next speaker, Dr. Ranadive.
So if I'm talking about grad school in Kines, especially in XPhys, so I'll just say that typically all you need is a course in XPhys and somewhere in advanced XPhys. And then as Gina could say more about biomechanics, and Dr. Jetty is on there with physical cultural studies, but you need some background course in that when you apply. Grad school from a research standpoint is very different. You contact the mentor before. So like Sarah Mascone is my student. She contacted me when she was doing an undergrad. Then if I like her perspective in research, what she's thinking about, that is when she applies or she gets in. It's the same thing where somebody from outside, Penn State student who applies in, contacts me first. We do an interview session and then we go ahead with the application. So it's slightly different than what you're used to with an undergrad. You just don't put in an application. You first talk to somebody that you're going to work with. Do you like their lab? Do you like their work? And so on. So in terms of requirements, typically the one thing that you need if you're thinking about research ever in your life is the grit. As long as you have grit, and as long as you could take pain in the sense of constantly thinking for getting paid fairly low as a grad student for about 4 to 5 years, you should be okay. There are multiple grad students. I've been a grad student. I've been a grad student who was married, had kids during my grad school. So it's not an easy thing. But if you want something that you will always, you're constantly thinking about every day about research ideas, where to put in grant and so on, then grad school might help you in that sense. The last point was how many students does a cohort typically take? I would say between maybe 1 or 2 PhD or master's students typically. So a Kines grad program, MA and PhD together, and Dr. Jetty could correct me, but I wouldn't say they take more than about 5 or 6 students a year. More than that, I would be surprised if that is a turnover that is happening. So that would be my perspective. So getting into grad school, if you're thinking about research part, contact the person and talk to as many people as possible early on. So it's a year out. So if you're thinking about fall 2021, you want to talk to people right now. Like I have already received at least about 4 inquiries for fall 2021. So That's how early the process starts for grad school.
Great. Thank you for really emphasizing the point about trying to find a mentor before you apply. I know that's a really important piece. And then Kara just shared that November 1st is the early deadline for starting the MCert program in June. So you can kind of keep that timeline in mind as well. And then also Dr. Renadive, I know you shared that grit was kind of one of those character traits or things that you look for in students, but are there other traits, qualities, skills, experiences that you found make a really good candidate in your applicants, or just grad students that you've worked with throughout your program here?
I usually look for students who have failed. So have they have an experience with failure before? And I emphasize on that because students who have typically had some kind of a failure, and I don't mean getting a B in a course. Getting a B in a course is disappointment at the best. What I mean is if you decided to do, let's say, a major and you couldn't sustain and you dropped out, took a year break, and then you came back in, that's a major setback. Like I look for those students because they have seen failure early on and managed to survive that. So they are going to be fine through grad school, because 90% of grad school is about failure. You're not going to succeed in 90% of your experiments. 90% of your grants get rejected. Typically 1 in 10 grant gets funded right now. And your manuscripts, you have to submit about 3 times before you get an acceptance. So you're constantly facing rejection. And so if you're a student who is A throughout, has never seen any sort of failure, and you enter grad school right away, the first year is really hard. I'm not saying that those students don't do well. I have Sarah in front of me who does fantastic in that environment. But that is one quality that I look at. And that is why I say grit, is because I'll ask them for an example as to where they have failed. Because failure also tells me that they have taken chances and not always stayed in their comfort zone. So if they have taken chances, that's a really good sign that they would be good grad students typically.
Thank you. And Kara, is there anything you would want to add to that for your population of students?
Yeah, I mean, the great thing about being a PE teacher, I know we're in a crazy time right now with COVID, but our teachers are still working and still getting paid. And there are different programs and services served. So what I've found is, you know, when students do their internship, it's a year-long internship, and part of it's in elementary, and then part of it, half the year is in secondary, which is either a middle school placement or a high school placement. By the end of that time, when they're ready to start interviewing, if they came in saying, I wanted to work with elementary or I want to work with little kids, they tested that during that internship. And so then it either validates and affirms, or it sways them. Oh, I actually like middle school. You know, puberty is not as scary as you think, right? So, or helping someone navigate their pathway to adulthood in high school is really where I want to mentor and give back to kids. So the one thing is like excellent communication skills. And we do also, I mean, life, if we don't pick ourselves back up again when we fall and struggle with something, I think that also overlaps with us, because I still get critical feedback and I learn and grow through every component. And my cohort of 12 students this year gives me feedback. They're like, Dr. Grant, did you do this? And I was like, oh yes, let me know. So I really do work with our students as colleagues instead of professor student relationship, because we're constantly learning and growing together to make it better for kids. So that constant cycle of learning from every experience, reflecting, someone that's a reflective person and says, oh, look, I can do it better if I do this. Instead of being satisfied with, oh yeah, that went well, I'll do that again next time. It's more like, that went well, but I think it would be better if I did this. That's the kind of person we're looking for.
Great, thank you. All right, at this point, we'll transition into some questions that we have for our current students. And don't feel like all of you have to share if it's kind of a similar experience that you've had or you agree. Feel free to use like the reactions, thumbs up to kind of like second whatever the speaker is sharing. But to start out, most of you mentioned that you completed your undergrad or previous degree at UMD, but if anyone would like to share if you applied to multiple graduate programs, what ultimately led you to select UMD to pursue your degree?
Well, I can tackle that, Lindsay, and I'll just say that my undergrad experience was what Dr. Sush has called, I've had some failures, like, and missed a couple benchmarks in kinesiology, but I think I really delved in when I reached out to my now advisor. She was a professor of mine, Shannon Jetty, who's on here right now. And so I just really liked and appreciated the support from my advisor. And I think kinesiology has a lot of supportive professors. And she was the one that pushed me to apply for the MA program. And I really didn't want to. I kind of wanted to go somewhere else because I didn't want to be on campus that long, or but again, and I am a TA, so I think that Maryland's kinesiology master's program is one of the few programs where master's students are fully funded. And so that was quite nice, because other programs, especially if you do like a 1 or 2 year accelerated program, I was looking at George Washington, I was looking at Georgetown, Hopkins here in Baltimore. They didn't want to fund me. And so Maryland's funding also was quite cushy and nice. And that continues on, that also continues on PhD wise as a doctoral student as well. So great professors, great mentorships, and then there's money, financial incentives as well.
Thank you. Gina, would you want to share, since you did not do your undergrad at Maryland, kind of what drew you into Maryland for your master's initially?
So for me, I got my undergrad at UNC, and then my plan originally was to go right into grad school. So I was thinking a master's. Unfortunately, that didn't work out. I didn't get into grad school right after I graduated. So instead, I took a gap year, which turned out to be really great. And during my gap year, I ended up in the DC area. And so when I was applying to grad school my second time around, location was a really big thing because I wasn't going to move again. So I was looking in this area and I knew I wanted to do research. So my top focus was really a research intensive institute, and that's kind of what UMD was. And I knew I wanted to do biomechanics, so I was looking in the Kines department and for faculty members who had a lot of experience doing the research that I was interested in. And the big thing that I was looking for really was faculty members who were actively publishing in the area that I was interested in. So, not that they had like one article 10 years ago and then haven't really touched it since. I kind of wanted someone who was really involved in the field and someone who I could learn a lot from. And so I found that in my advisor, so Dr. Shim, but in our lab, it's called the Neuromechanics Research Lab. We have a lot of great professors that have a lot of experience in that area. So I was really happy to get accepted and into a pretty good program. So that was kind of what I was looking for.
Thank you. And Sarah or Sam, do either of you have anything different that you wanted to add to that question?
Yeah, I can add real quick that if you are in this talk because you kind of wanted to go into the medical field or wanted to do PT, but those fields don't feel quite right to you, something doesn't feel like it quite clicks, there's a reason that you came to this talk today. That's one thing I experienced as an undergrad. I was like, hey, I'm going to be an orthopedic surgeon. Then I was like, no. Then I was like, PT school? No, I never wanted to do PT school. And then I met Dr. Rana Dive, and he was like, hey, have you ever thought about research? And honestly, I was like, oh my God, I love knowledge and questions and being able to investigate a question you have and actually do research. It was such a aha moment for my life that now has really set me up for a career and for years of just happiness and hard work, like Dr. Rana Dive said. So definitely, if you're here because you are kind of questioning what you had wanted to do, definitely take the leap of faith. And even if you just get a master's out of it and you decide you don't want to do research, it's still a really good experience that prepares you for a ton of fields, a ton of things in life.
Thank you for that experience. And I do feel like just from the students that I was recommending attend this talk, I think a lot of them, you know, will hopefully value what you just shared and are kind of finding themselves in that situation. To kind of piggyback off of what you were saying and to send it back to Dr. Renadive, can you speak from your experience? I feel like especially in exercise physiology, do you think it's common for our grad students, especially those in the MA, to kind of use it as a stepping stone to pursue either an MD or like non-PhD research position and maybe transition back into that allied health field or medical field later on? And if so, can you kind of speak to that for a little bit?
Yeah, actually, my very first master student, Catalina, decided when she came in, she was quite undecided as to if she wanted to do a PhD or wanted to get into MD or actual medical field or allied health sciences. And so she decided to go towards MD program. So she got a master's, and during the last year of her master's, she was applying for the MD programs and going for interviews while collecting her thesis data. So she was kind of running on nitro boost, if you may, and I think pots and pots of coffee. But overall, like that has been my experience, not just here, but also at Mayo, where students got an MA degree, as Sarah said, and then decided to switch into either medical side or get into PT. Even though I'm an occupational therapist by background, I wouldn't do it the other way around. I wouldn't get a master's and then shift into PT or OT schools. It's just 2 years of long winded road. Nothing wrong with it. It just I wouldn't do it. But medical side, medical field, DO, MD, any of those. I know a student who's gone into pharmacy following a master's in XPhys, and that is completely a feasible thing that students have decided to do. So there are examples getting into direct medical fields or allied health sciences after a master's. But I think, as Tori said, Maryland is an extremely rare school that funds a master's program. There might be one more, if I'm not mistaken, but even amongst Big 12, there are very, very few schools that would support a master's program. So we are lucky in that sense. I mean, the department and the college has done fantastic with that.
Thank you. And that's a great transition into our next question, because Tori, you had also spoken to briefly experience of being a TA and kind of the opportunities that are available for that. So just kind of opening it up for you all to share a little bit more for either being a research assistant or teaching assistant, and kind of how do you get set up with that? What are the options available, and kind of how do you balance that role of being a grad student with like your actual student self responsibilities, plus just everything else of like transitioning into the adult world?
Well, I'll kick off with that and say that, well, to answer your first question about the TAship, to my understanding, I think, like unless you don't want to be or are unable to be a full-time grad MA student or a PhD student, I think most of us come in with the intention of being funded or being TAs or research assistants or graduate assistants. And all these assistantships, they're typically over 9.5 months, so you get paid over the winter. And they actually allow you to try out being a teacher, because I do think that the kinesiology track is a little more skewed towards pushing their students into staying within academia, which is great. And so that TAship also allows you to hone your public speaking skills. It allows you to teach within your field, because teaching is such an important thing, because a lot of things I understand better once I say it out loud and try to teach others. So it gives you that opportunity as well. And not only the TAship, but there are so many scholarships and grants that that you can, that I personally have received, I know my colleagues have received, and kinesiology is very, I think, generous, and more generous than what other students from other departments tell me. And so just being a TA, which is a teaching assistant, it's just a really, really great opportunity to, and it also looks good on your CV. So you do hone a lot of skills with being a TA.
Anyone else want to share their experience of an RA or TA and balancing that with your graduate responsibilities?
I can add something. So this is my first year being a TA. And the one thing I found really helpful is staying in a routine and keeping a routine. So I know what days I want to grade. So I have kind of scheduled time into that. And then I also know what my schedule's like for my other classes. So I can do that work before. A big thing I find helpful, not just in grading, but in schoolwork in general, is setting kind of time limits. So I'll say I'm only going to grade for an hour today. So that kind of avoids me from wasting a lot of time when I could be doing a lot of other things. And then kind of going off of what Tori was saying, something I've really liked about being a TA so far is that I've gone to kind of examine my own writing skills. So when I'm grading other people's papers, I'm starting to see patterns of how I write and how I would want to improve based on the kind of feedback I'm giving others. So I think that's been really helpful.
And to piggyback off of what Sam said, the name of the game for being a TA seems to be figuring out your balance of efficiency. So how much time are you going to put into grading, and how can you most efficiently give the best feedback possible? So when I'm in person, I try to establish a really positive communication between my students and myself initially. First session, I'm like, hey, it's always better to communicate than to not communicate, and after the fact, you couldn't turn your assignment in, then come to me with this, that, and the other excuse. I always try to establish that positive line of communication so students feel really comfortable coming to me. And that can often ease the pain of grading on the back end, because then students will ask more questions, they will reach out to you, and they also will engage with the material a lot better because they have a positive, like a smiley face in their mind next to Kines 320 or whatever class I'm TAing, not a sad face. So that's definitely a big takeaway for my year and some change of being a TA. And over the summer, I got the chance to be kind of an RA with the funding I had. And I can tell you it was very nice because I got to focus on research. I got to focus on my master's a lot. I got to really engage with the literature, even though COVID was upsetting, and it's still, is definitely a big obstacle in all of our lives. But if you ever can get that mixture of a TAship, but also somehow get on an RA-ship at any point and you're doing research, it's really awesome to experience both things and to get that focused time during an RA, but also get that teaching experience during a TA.
Thank you. And Gina, was there anything that you want to add or just kind of agree with what everyone else has said?
Yeah, I agree with everyone or what everyone else has said. And I did want to add kind of to what Sarah had just talked about. This semester, I'm actually being funded as an RA. For the past 3 years, I was a TA, so I have a little bit of both of those experiences. And the TA experience was nice, although I will admit it was really hard my first semester, trying to balance just being a first-time grad student plus learning like a little curriculum for the lab that I was teaching and dealing with the grading and my own homework and all that stuff. So I would say that the first semester is typically the hardest, but then it gets easier after that. So typically this department does a nice job of trying to keep you on the same or class schedule. So, you'll teach the same lab semester to semester, and that'll clear up a lot of your time trying to learn a new lab or discussion section or stuff like that. So that was really helpful. And then, so for this semester, I'm in an RA now, which like Sarah said, is really nice that you can focus on research and you don't have to do any of the grading or the teaching and stuff like that. But I think it is, the lines get a little bit blurred between when you have to do your work and when it's time to do RA work. So the whole big theme is, time management and scheduling and stuff like that.
Great, thank you. And so kind of the last question that I wanted to lead off with for this portion was, since you all represent the different areas, and at this point I saw that we did have Brooks and Leanne join us, who are current students in the MCERT program, so feel free to join in if you would like, but to kind of just provide that snapshot of what does your coursework look like in a nutshell for your respective area. And then what are kind of some of those unique experiences that align with your specific area, whether that's like conferences you've attended, fellowships you've received, or just kind of what do those opportunities look like? So we'll just go ahead and go in order of how you all are listed under current students. So we'll start with Sarah.
Hi, everybody. So for ex-phys, a lot of the courses are very, very different than undergrad courses, which is really awesome, and also can be a little nerve-wracking when you first are transitioning to being a grad student. As an undergrad, everything's very outlined, like, hey, you have this assignment due this time, and this is your rubric. But in grad courses, things are much more self-driven and much more discussion, research paper based. And those are just some of the special topics kind of courses I've taken. There are some required courses like statistics, like research ethics, that do have a little bit more structure, but the courses I felt I've gotten a ton out of research wise have been those special topics, more so like symposium style courses. And those are the ones I was more so speaking to. In terms of conferences, I've had the chance to go to 2 different ACSM conferences, and I'm going to present at a 3rd one soon, which is so exciting. I'm really happy to do that. And conferences are awesome. You get this mixture of networking, some super awesome scientists all coming together and really having a great time. It's really fun. You get to meet new people. You get to present some research yourself, which is that public speaking, giving you some of that research money, some of those things you put on your CV that make you look really good to someone reading your CV. So I highly recommend conferences, and definitely applying to grants as early as you can if you're in research in your grad program, because even if you get rejected, like Dr. Andrea said, you probably will a couple of times. The process of learning how to write a grant and going through that with colleagues is incredibly, it's priceless. It's a really good thing to learn.
Thank you. All right, and we will transition over to Tori.
Yeah, I second all of Sarah's notions. I would say that read everything. I probably read about maybe like 100 to 200 pages a week. I take 3 courses, and physical cultural studies is a very sociological field. So it's a lot of writing, reading, a lot of theorizing. That's the type of research that we do. I'm sorry, my puppy is like he's angsty. He needs to go out. Yeah, so read a lot of reading, which is kind of scary for me at first, because I'm like, oh, I don't know how I'm gonna be able to keep up, but it's truly a love of the game. So like Dr. Shush said, like I just like to do it. So it's not a burden, more so. And traveling to conferences is great in Kines. They offer a lot of travel scholarships. Every year you can apply, I believe it's up to $500 for a travel scholarship. So every year, the past 3 years, I've attended conferences, one in Vancouver, last semester in Virginia Beach. This year is supposed to be New Orleans, but Corona messed that up. But I think they transferred it to Las Vegas. They moved it to Las Vegas next semester for next year. So I'm excited about that. So, and these conferences are really great because they also allow you, like Sarah said, to meet scholars, and then you can win more scholarship money too. And so it's just a great way of networking, but you don't have to be. I think a lot of people like to emphasize how broke you'll be in grad school, but sometimes that's not the case all the time. But that's just my perspective. So
thank you. All right, and Gina, I'll transition over to you next.
So current course load can really vary. During the first couple of years, or first year and a half maybe, it was very just course heavy. So I was taking like 3 courses this semester, and they were kind of like what Sarah said, more in like the special focus areas. There were some structured ones like the ethics and statistics and Kines and public health, those kind of courses that everyone has to take as a master's student. But There more so were those kind of special interests. So in biomechanics, we had a couple courses that kind of focus on a certain area or a certain method in biomechanics that I was taking. So now that I'm a second year PhD student, it's a little bit different. So typically I'll take 2 classes in an independent study because I am really research focused. The independent study is more so to help me have more time to focus on my own research. So things like planning my dissertation or getting preliminary studies or data analysis or stuff like that. That's what that kind of class is for. So less coursework, less kind of busy work, so day-to-day stuff. But it's different work and a lot of work in other ways. So it kind of changes, but I like it that way. Not as much reading probably as Tori's doing, but still a good amount of reading to keep up with the literature and stuff. But definitely a lot of kind of like research and that on the side. As far as like funding and opportunities and stuff like that, I would have gone to 2 conferences this year, but Corona. So hopefully those will be something I'll do next year if everything's back to normal. But there's tons of opportunities to go, and our department and our lab really, encourages you to go to these conferences. And like everyone said, there's lots of opportunities for funding from them too. And there's funding in lots of different places. So I've gotten funding from the Kines department that helped funded my thesis. And then I got funding from like the graduate school. That's another source of funding for the summer. And then external scholarships are also a big thing. So like Tori said, you don't always have to be broke. There are lots of places to get funding if you look for it. So if you say that you need funding for a certain semester or for the summer or something like that, just try looking, and I think you'll really find it, or find someone who will help you find it.
Thanks. And then can you speak very briefly about the fellowship that you had this summer with, I know it was with Under Armour, and then I'm forgetting the name of the organization that it was actually through.
Yeah, so the organization was called Women in Sports Tech. So it's a nonprofit that helps women kind of enter the door of the sports tech industry. And I can't say enough positive things about it. So it was really cool. It basically allows you to have a summer fellowship at a company. So it can be like a startup, or it can be a company like Under Armour, who is established, bigger company, or another nonprofit. You have lots of options, but it's basically just to get you an opportunity. If that company doesn't have a established internship, this funding from this fellowship will allow you to still work with them. So you don't only get, the job experience, the internship experience with that company, but you also get connected to this huge network of people in the women in sports tech industry. So I've gotten to talk to a lot of cool people through that, and they have, weekly video sessions where you get to meet people and connect with them and stuff. So if you guys are interested in that, unfortunately, you do have to be female to apply for it, but please ask me any questions that you have. And they are trying to fund 21 scholarships this upcoming cycle. So there are a lot of opportunities for people to get those fellowships next year.
Awesome, thank you. All right, and then Sam.
So for my course load right now, I'm currently taking 3 courses. I'm kind of finishing up the core areas. So these are the more general public health classes, and I'm starting to get more into the kinesiology side of everything. And kind of those classes are preparing me to eventually start kind of next semester, preparing for internship and research methods and things like that. I haven't been to any conferences yet, but I'm hoping, kind of pandemic pending, that hopefully next semester or next year sometime I'll be able to participate in some of those. I did have the opportunity though to become a This is Public Health ambassador through, I'm gonna mess up the name, Association of Schools and Programs of Public Health or something like that, which has been a really cool opportunity so far. So I've gone to take over their social media accounts, and I'm currently going to start working on a project for K-12 physical activity programs, which I'm excited about. But yeah, it's really nice to be able to meet other people in public health and kind of promote physical activity in public health, because that's still not getting enough recognition.
Awesome, thank you. All right, so I do want to be mindful of everyone's time, and we will go ahead and transition into the breakout room portion. It's going to take me a little bit to get breakout rooms set up. I believe with the most recent Zoom upgrade, if everyone has that, people will hopefully be able to shift themselves from room to room. But I also know that technology isn't always in our favor, and I will probably have to manually move you. So if you are a student who would like to be placed into a specific room, just go ahead and send that directly to me in the chat as far as like the name of the room that you want to get sent into. And then all of our current panelists, I'll put you in the respective room as well. As I'm getting that organized, if either Brooks or Leanne would like to speak about the MCert program as far as like what the coursework looks like and that kind of thing, if you want to share that information, that would be great.
Hi, this is Leanne. I can try and speak on my experience, but I know since I have finished the program, it has altered a little bit. But I can just speak briefly on a little bit of the expectation. So it is for my experience, it was a 13-month master's program. You had to meet some prerequisites to be able to apply. So for myself, I had to take a few courses before going back to school for the program. It starts in the summertime. You have about, I think, like 4 classes, I think, over the summer. It's been so long, I'm so sorry, I can't remember. And then in the fall, you start your full year teaching internship. I know now that they do the elementary teaching internship for the first semester, along with taking some classes with Dr. Grant. And then in the spring, you will transition to your secondary teaching internship. And then again, continuing some more classes with Dr. Grant. Along the way, you have to complete EdTPA, which the name is confusing. It's just a really long process of reflecting and videotaping yourself teaching, and basically you learning how to teach and being reflective on your teaching, as well as writing a research paper on a topic reflecting on your master's program. So I'm just going to keep it there. If Brooks or Dr. Grant want to chime in, go for it.
Yeah, I would say you did a good job, Leanne. They're hitting on all the major parts. I know I can speak personally. I got my kinesiology degree at Maryland in 4 years, and then went right into the MCert program. So I didn't really have any education classes before I started the program. All the prereqs were just those straight up kines classes, more or less. So I really didn't get the education classes until I got into the MCert program. But that being said, the transition was still really smooth. All of my classes were either totally online or kind of a hybrid, or they were just night classes after I had the teaching during the day. And like Leanne said, it was elementary for the first half of the year, and then either a middle school or a high school for the second half of the year. So yeah, I think that pretty much hits all of it.
All right, great. Thank you so much. I'm like furiously typing away over here, trying to get everyone assigned into their breakout rooms. And then I will also open them. So again, if you do have the ability to select your own room, that will hopefully work. And the other thing that would have been intelligent for me to include would be email addresses for all of our panelists. So if our students do have follow-up questions, they would have your contact info. So if your contact information is something you are comfortable sharing with them, that might be great to include. Either send that out in the chat or exchange that with them when you get into the breakout room. And then at this time, I will also end the recording. So thank you all again for your participation today. And you will receive your invitations shortly.